Welcome back, students, in this last part of my lecture. You see, many scholars throughout ages have noted a number of literary influences onto autumn. John Keats' this poem to autumn bears striking influences from Virgil's Georgics, Edmund Spenser Mutability Cantos, and to the language of Thomas Chatterton, and to Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Frost at Midnight, to an essay An Autumn by Leigh Hunt, which Keats had recently read before composing this poem. So, this poem to autumn is thematically connected to other odes that Keats wrote in 1890. I have discussed this connection between ode to melancholy, a major theme of accepting the progress of life, the process of human life. This theme appears later in Ode to Autumn. However, it is with a difference. This time, the figure of the poet disappears and there is no exaltation of an imaginary reader. There are no open conflicts and dramatic debate, protest, or qualifications are altogether absent. But there is a process of harmony, this sense of harmonization, right, between the finality of death, right, the inevitability of death, and indicating the renewal of life, restoration, regeneration, or rebirth, as we may term it, in the cycle of seasons, paralleled by the renewal of a single day. So it is like at the daybreak, the sun rises, the day starts. After the noon, the sun actually starts to set in the west, in the horizon. So we arrive at the afternoon, then there is an evening, the end of the day, and at last we have the night, and after night there will be dawn on, there will be another rising of the sun, and cyclically there will be the setting of the sun, like this. After autumn there will be winter, and after winter there will be spring, the season of rebirth or regeneration, and there will be the season of summer, the full blossoming, the nourishing of life. So the cycle continues, the cycle of life, and this is strikingly similar to our Indian philosophy, which is often termed as Chakravat Parivartante. So, like a cycle, like a wheel, the time runs like a wheel, right? And the things constantly changes. You see, critics have tended to emphasize different aspects of the process. Some have focused on renewal, while a critic named Walter Jackson Pate points to the theme of each stanza, including its contrary idea. Here, death implying, though only indirectly, the renewal of life. Harold Bloom, one of the most eminent critics, have emphasized the exhausted landscape, the completion, the finality of death. Although winter descends here as a man might hope to die with a natural sweetness. If death in itself is final, here it comes to a lightness, a softness, also pointing to an acceptance of process beyond the possibility of grief. What Harold Bloom is suggesting. The progress of growth is no longer necessary, maturation is complete, and life and death are in harmony. The rich description of the cycle of the seasons enables the reader to feel a belonging to complete larger than the self. A critic, James O'Rourke, expresses it, but the cycle comes to an end each year, analogous to the ending of a single life, birth, youth, and death. O'Rourke suggests that something of a fear of that ending is subtly implied at the end of the poem. According to Helen Wendler, to autumn may be seen as an allegory of artistic creation as the farmer processes the fruits of the soil into what sustains the human body. So the artist processes the experience of human life into a symbolic structure which sustains the human spirit. This process involves an element of self-sacrifice by the artist, analogous or homologous to the living grains being sacrificed for human consumption. So in this way, to autumn, as a result of this process, the rhythms of the harvesting artist goddesses permeate the whole world until all visual, tactile, and kinetic presence is transubstantiated into Apollonian music for the ear. This is what Helen Vander is writing. The sounds of the poem itself. In the year 1979, another essayist, Jerome McGann, argued that while the poem was indirectly influenced by historical events, Keats had deliberately ignored the political landscape of 1819. Right? And countering this view, Andrew Bennett, Nicholas Rowe focused that they argued for a direct connection with what we know as the Peterloo Massacre of 1819. So more recently, in 2012, a specific probable location of the cornfield that inspired Keats was discussed in an article by the critic Richard McGrath Tarley and other people like Jane Archer and Howard Thomas, which draws upon new archival evidence. Traditionally, the water meadows south of Winchester, along which Keats took daily leisurely walks, were assumed to have provided the sights and sound of his ode. So these people, this is Tartley, Archer, and Thomas, they argued that this ode was more directly inspired by Keats' visit to St. Giles Hill, site of a new cornfield at the eastern extremity of the market city. So this new topography, the authors argue, enables us to see hitherto unsuspected dimensions to Keats' engagement with contemporary politics in particular, as they pertain to the management of food production and supply wages and in altogether the sense of productivity. Alan Bewell, a critic of in the year 1999, in his essay, writes that the landscape of To Autumn is a kind of biomedical allegory of the coming into being of English climatic spaces out of its dangerous geographical alternatives. So Britain's colonial reach over the previous century and a half had exposed the mother country to foreign diseases and awareness of the dangers of extreme tropical climates. Keats with medical training has suffered chronic illness himself, right? And influenced by his contemporary as colonial medical discourse, which was deeply aware of the threat. So, in opposition to this view, conversely, in presenting the particular English elements of this environment, Keats was also influenced by contemporary poet and essayist Leigh Hunt, the most famous essayist of the Romantic period, who had recently written on the arrival of autumn with its migration of birds, finished harvest, cedar making, and migration of the swallows, as well as by the English landscape painting. And the pure English idiom of the poetry of Thomas Chatterton, Geoffrey Hartman, a critic who expounded a view of To Autumn as an ideological pattern of the poem whose form expresses a national idea. At last, recently, in the decades of 2000, a critic named Thomas McFarland, he cautioned against overemphasizing or stressing, laying stress on the political, social, or historical readings of the poem, which distracted from its consummate surface and bloom. Most importantly, Keats in this poem, To Autumn, in its concentration of imagery and allusion, in its evocation of nature, this poem conveys an impenetration of livingness and timeness as contained in the very nature of autumn. This is what Thomas McFarland is suggesting. Now, regarding your questions, you should focus on this cyclical pattern of revolving of time, rotation of time. A season of summer culminates or reaches its climax, its pinnacle in autumn. Then thereafter it slowly decreases, declines into death as a metaphor represented by the season winter, and in the spring there is another rebirth, regeneration, and blossoming in the summer. So this cycle continues. Like a day passes with the passing of night, there is dawn, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, we have the afternoon, the darkness of the evening, and the completely dark, gloomy night suggesting death. Like similarly, an analogous pattern can be witnessed in the human life. Right? A baby is born, he reaches or she reaches its maturity in the youth. Then he or she grows old and finally he or she dies. So this is the cycle. The cycle is continuing since time immemorial. And the description of the nature, right? Season of autumn. This should be your. This can be a second question, right? So please focus on these issues which I have discussed in these 3 lectures. Prepare your answers and all the best for your exam. Thank you.